Thank you very much for inviting me. Hello, everybody. I see lots of familiar faces. It's great to be here again with the EIF. We've been discussing so many things over the years. And here we got now into this topic, which, as Lucilla was saying before, is really the talk of the town right now. And in my opinion, even in an exaggerated way, because we tend to see the world in an almost AI-centric way sometimes, and the policy at the EU level in a sort of AI-centric way. Also, maybe I propose that Lucilla gets a red card and a green card, and as the more I share some details on the work of the high-level expert group, if I cross some boundaries, you can raise the red card, and I'll stop immediately and go somewhere else. To me, the debate on what to do with AI at the European level, first of all, it should not be framed as a race. It's not, although some other parts of the world, in particular China, have been very explicit in setting their strategy with a clear goal to dominate AI worldwide by 2030. But I don't think the EU should be in that race. Also because we cannot mobilize the same level of resources. We don't have the same population. We don't have the same ability to do things, the same, let's say, possibility to do things so top down and let's say, shape markets that easily. I think that the EU can definitely have a very important say in AI, but there is, if I were asked, how do you do it? I'm conscious of the fact that that's going to be extremely difficult, because there are big, giant legal systems and jurisdictions that are working on AI in a very ambitious way. And the EU, even if we put together the 20 billions a year, we're not going to get any close to the level of investment that is going to emerge there. So can we do something in this respect? Well, sometimes you've heard, how many people in the room, let's do a little survey, have heard the words, data is the new oil. How many people have had chicken in an EIF dinner? Well, that's everybody. Okay, whatever. Sorry for that. I don't even know if there's chicken coming in, but most likely. Well, to me, you tell me the red card. Okay, red card. To me, data is not necessarily the new oil, and we also know that AI, the way in which it's currently being developed, is very data hungry. But we don't know if Europe should actually bet on developing necessarily always extremely data hungry AI. We have a different approach to data, and I would propose a different formulation there. In my opinion, trust is the new oil, not data. Trust is the new oil for a number of reasons. First of all, if you let me cut a very long story short, let's say from the financial crisis till today, I think we've lived two moments of collapse of trust. First, in the public sector, and partly, of course, in the financial sector during the financial crisis and onwards. But also over the past few years, gradually, those large tech giants that had preserved the trust of the end users have also shown signs of a need to reinvent themselves and to get to grips and to sort of come down to an agreement with the needs of society. Cambridge Analytica, the various antitrust cases, and various other signs that users are starting to lose faith a little bit also in the current establishment of the internet economy. I think there is a trust race going on. And the trust is not just a matter of how you tackle AI. In my opinion, there are at least two ways in which you build a different system that, let's say, elicits more trust at the EU level. And this is not necessarily only related to the AI, but it's broader. So I go into this broader direction, and then I come down a little bit onto what we are doing. So the first thing, in my opinion, that we should be doing is not concentrate only on AI, but on the full-fledged internet ecosystem, on all the layers. You can only build a competitive ecosystem if you have infrastructure that is adequately conducive to supporting the unbelievable applications that are going to be created and that will also use AI. We need a good environment for the Internet of Things, and this is going to pose enormous challenges in terms of policy, much more than AI, in my opinion. We need a connectivity, 5G in particular, and then in the future generations that are conducive to those data exchanges. And of course, we need a regulatory framework that enables us to build harmoniously what happens on top of the existing platforms. And this requires, of course, an approach to data, which doesn't have to be handled with fear, but rather with care. And in my opinion, an approach to data that is handled with care and not with fear requires experimenting with data spaces, experimenting with data slices, with data exchanges at the sectoral level, experimenting with the ways in which you can maximize the free flow of data by minimizing the flow of personally identifiable information. Are we there yet? It's going to be very complicated, and that's why we do research. And I think this is where we have to put some of the money in our research efforts. So a full-fledged, harmonious development of the internet ecosystem, I think, is what we need to restore trust in that infrastructure, that ether that we have on top of us, which is becoming our fifth element, right, in nature, which is the internet and the information technology overall. There's a more ambitious thing that the EU is trying to do and potentially could do to achieve trust again. And on this, I go, completely off track, not necessarily on the red card, but it's something that I believe is very pertinent and relevant. 3 weeks ago, the European Commission presented its reflection paper on Agenda 2030. And the reflection paper on Agenda 2030 speaks of our vision for the medium term. I mean, how do we want society to look like in the medium term? Now, I will not spend a lot of time on this unless you want to know more about this. But in my opinion, asking ourselves the question, what is that Europe can do for AI from a competitiveness perspective? It's not necessarily the best way of realizing and shaping Europe's approach towards this promising family of technologies. If we asked ourselves, how do we approach AI from the standpoint of the Sustainable Development Goals, we get completely different answers. How do we approach AI from the perspective of creating a society in which there is full and decent employment, which is one of the goals that we have in the SDGs? How do we approach AI in a way that preserves environmental sustainability, in a way that preserves and promotes investment in human capital, in reducing gender inequality, in reducing inequality in general, which is a mounting problem? We have to ask ourselves the question, how do we build trustworthy AI by nesting it in this medium-term agenda? So if you want me to use a sort of a slogan for this, to me, the issue on top of trust is the new oil. The issue is don't ask yourself what Europe can do for AI, but rather the other way around, okay? This is, to some extent, taking AI as a technology that is an enabler, a technology that is a means to an end. And the end cannot be happier robots. Or the end cannot be, I'm just kidding, of course, you know what I mean. It cannot be maximizing the competitiveness of the EU overall, or even in specific industrial sectors. This will be functional to a vision of society that comes in the medium term. But certain things are indeed more important than that. And I think if we take AI as a means, we can lead the world on that. And this is the final part of the remarks that I wanted to offer you. The type of strategy, in my opinion, that the EU should follow in research, in investment, and also in geopolitics more generally, meaning in how to play a role in a global community, is in, first of all, putting the research money and investment money and the policy initiatives towards a sustainable future, and showing how AI can be used for good. There is an enormous gap of leadership at the global level on this issue. There's the AI for Good initiative at the UN level, but if you ask me whether those big giants that we're talking about here that we have put on the title of this conference are really looking at AI for good explicitly, well, some of these solutions might come up anyway, but I don't think there's any specific emphasis on AI for good. So this is not coming from the high-level expert group on AI. Let me be clear on this. This is purely my personal thinking. Now, and this doesn't rule out any competitiveness-related issues, which is something that we might talk about, and on which I think I agree with Lucilla that some of the sectors are sectors in which the EU, and more generally in what we call embodied AI, the EU can definitely play a pivotal role at the global level. But in my opinion, if the EU managed to build a really flourishing environment where AI can be used in support of a more prosperous society, the EU will be able to also promote these ideas in the standardization bodies at the global level. This is where I would go first, like IEEE and the others. In the developing countries, in the World Bank, and all these international donors that don't know exactly why they are promoting AI, but they are. In trying to avoid that in developing countries, algorithmic judges are used just because you want to save money, and in avoiding that products come on from developed to developing countries in a way that doesn't leave any knowledge where they're being deployed. This is my personal vision of AI. I think we're not far, if we look at the world of the high-level expert group, from this vision, although the work has been developed in a slightly different way, and in a way that I largely agree with, on the idea that the EU can play an important role if it does two main things. First of all, fixing and defining important ethical principles that AI should potentially adhere to, could potentially adhere to, as an aspirational goal. And also doing the homework on policy and investment that would support Europe's credibility in setting those principles. These are two complementary strategies. On the first, we have, of course, published as a high-level expert group draft guidelines. And then we've progressed enormously since those draft guidelines, also thanks to the several contributions that we have received. I think, despite the fact that the work that we've done so far seems to us to be massive, I think the least is done. Meaning the moment we will have fixed a definition of trustworthy AI and a series of principles that we would like to propose to the rest of Europe and the world as principles that AI could potentially adhere to, we will need to work on whether these principles should be a list of principles, whether these would be principles that we largely endorse, or whether some of these principles we actually enforce. And in my opinion, this is the gray area where most of this game is being played, and where Europe can make the difference in the global debate on AI policy. My personal take on this is that adhering to all principles at once in all sectors would be impossible and would be counterproductive. So we need to be proportionate. We cannot ask someone that develops AI for an industrial B2B platform, for example, to do good, to adhere to the beneficence principle as a mandatory principle. These are for-profit AI systems. It's a different story when we talk about AI being deployed in public services or AI being deployed in healthcare. There, we might end up considering forms that are softer or harder, we'll see that, to make sure that AI is designed for all. It is designed to be inclusive. And maybe in some specific cases, it's designed to be sustainable from a social and environmental perspective. So I'm coming close to the red card here before Lucilla shows it to me, and also in terms of timing, not only in terms of content. These are, I think, more or less the contribution that I wanted to give, and maybe to elicit some discussion later on. To me, sometimes there are moments in life where you have a choice. Either you just lag behind, or you are bold enough that you get to the forefront. And I think on AI policy and the whole ecosystem that surrounds it, we are there. If we're not bold and really coordinated, EU member states, private sector, I think we're going to lag behind, and we're going to have problems in many, many respects, because AI is also a matter of geopolitics and inevitably sovereignty these days. So I don't venture into that, but you know, this is a very well-learned crowd, so you all know that very well. I hope I have not disrupted the speech that Cecilia is about to give, but she probably has a completely different view. And I hope I haven't disrupted your chicken. But that said, is it? Is it? Okay.
Now you're right.
So maybe I keep talking because I don't want to get back to the table. No, I'm kidding. So thanks, everybody. So I leave you with just a statement. We don't know if we're going to get the ethics right first and follow with policy, or the policy right and then follow with ethics. But overall, this is a chicken and egg problem. Okay, thank you.